Hey guys, welcome back to Tribe Talk. Jim here. I'm with my buddy Mike. Say hi, Mike.
Howdy.
How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good. We got a very, very, very special guest tonight, guys. And Mike, take it away.
Okay, yeah. So we're just kind of give a little intro to who we're talking to tonight. This is Elizabeth Libby Marion. She grew up and moving all over the country as an Air Force military brat. Her dad's words, not mine, the brat part. But her family settled in Niceville, Florida in 2018, where she attended and graduated from Niceville High School magna cum laude.
Yeah, I was corrected. She was summa cum laude.
Okay, so she was smart. That's great. Thanks for pointing that out to us. She was the centerpiece of most of the stressful dance team class in the history of Niceville High School, capturing 5 state titles and finished as high as 4th place in the nation in one category at nationals. She is a junior at Florida State University, studying criminology. What's that?
Go Noles.
Go Noles.
That's right. Studying criminology, where she hopes to become an Air Force OSI agent upon graduation. Most importantly, she is a young woman of deep faith in Jesus Christ, and she happens to be the second daughter of our very own, I'm trying to read this, what does that say? Jim Marion.
Hi, guys.
That's you, the adult.
I'm very proud.
Okay, well, we're glad you're here. We're very excited about this, and we want to get to know you better and just hear your story. And the idea of what we want to do with these podcasts is we think that stories are important and that people can grow closer to their faith in Christ and also find some healing in their own lives. And so that's what we want to kind of do with you today. So kind of get started here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about school, and then why did you choose your major, and what kind of stuff are you into?
Okay, hi guys. So major, I've always just been really interested in criminal minds. So I decided to do criminology, and I also just kind of liked also tying like into my faith. Like I believe like we serve like a just God, and I feel like if there's something I can do to be a part of that, then like that's what I want. Like I want to be all in for that. And I feel like that's kind of what I can do with criminology. You can do it with criminal justice too, but that's kind of where the Air Force OSI comes in. Being able to be a part of that. Love Florida State, go Noles. The stuff that I'm into, me and my friends play a lot of pickleball, play a lot of cards, a lot
Fastest
of cooking.
growing sport in the country, Mike.
Yes, yes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Honestly, the main thing I do is SALT up there, which is through City Church. So it's the SALT Network company. It's awesome. It's like my college ministry. I lead a city group, Women of the Way, with my best friends. It's awesome.
That's cool.
But yeah, loving it.
Okay, awesome. So to go back to this idea of understanding criminal minds, this is really about understanding your father, right?
We're starting right away.
No comment.
By the way, car rides with Libby are awesome.
Yeah.
Because she listens to these Criminal Minds podcasts.
No, I do. I listen to the Serial Killers podcast. It's so good.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
And you end up terrified by the time you
No,
get
I
there.
think it's great. I think it's great.
Awesome. Okay, well, that's cool. Tell us, how about when you were little? What was your thing? What kept you off the streets? What are the things that you used to do to kind of stay out of trouble?
Main thing was dance. Like, I just love dance. I started out with ballet, was really into that. Kind of got into more jazz, contemporary, and hip-hop, and like all the other kind of stuff. Tap, I did that for a little bit too. But I was just always dancer. I did softball for a little bit. Love camping. That's like one of the things I love to do even still now. Like with my friends, we just went camping a month ago. But I love doing that. Love being outdoors, riding my bike, all that kind of stuff.
For sure. I got to tell you, this
I'm
kid.
Scared.
So imagine watching a movie. It could be any movie. And you have this kid, 5 years old, doing cartwheels over the ottoman for the entire hour and 45 minutes while you're watching a movie.
Yes.
This is Libby.
Yeah.
Okay, Libby doesn't sit still for 5 minutes.
I can't.
She's hyperactive, always on the go, and she would make me dizzy watching movies. The only thing worse than sitting through a movie with her doing that was making her not do it. So
Yeah,
we encouraged her to be very active, and she always was, and she still is. It's
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, a little bit more. So I know a little bit about your dad, just a little bit, and it's actually could use some psychological help because of that. Anyway, tell me what it was like being raised by this guy, this goofy guy, when you were little, and you can embarrass him all you want.
Ooh, I would love to be able to embarrass him, but like I honestly just only have like really great reviews. I think it really clicked for me when I went to college, just how lucky I was to be raised by the parents I was raised by. They just really instilled like what Christ-like strength, love, hope, forgiveness is like, and how to facilitate that in relationships, whether that's like, you know, like, and for me, like, would be my husband, or whether that's with friends, or, you know, teachers, people I don't like, or people that I'm trying to love even though they make it difficult. Like, they've always just been like the epitome of what I think of when I think of like a godly marriage and like parents. And I've always appreciated my parents, like I've like even just growing up, but when I went to college it really kind of clicked for me like how much people are missing out on that, like the present loving father, not just of like, yeah, my father was there, but like, yes, but did he love you like Christ loves you? Like, is that something that you've experienced? Because if you've never experienced that, like it's a very night and day difference of that. And like I've noticed that when I went to college, and I'm like really appreciative of that. I was actually talking to my friend the other day, hometown friend. I went and met up with her, and she was always at our house when I was in high school. Like all my friends, like our house was the meetup spot. So we all just kind of came, and she was like, I miss your parents. I love that they were always in my life and they treated me like I was one of their own. And because I didn't realize I was missing that in my life until I met your parents. And I also just love that they've modeled that for me, like what it's just like to show up for people and be like, I know that that you're struggling right now, and I know it's going to be inconvenient maybe, or maybe uncomfortable or suck for me to come and help you with this, but I'm going to do it because I know you need it. And I know that you don't have anyone else that's going to carry your burdens with you, but I'm trying to be faithful in the Lord and obedient, and I'm going to do that with you anyways. And I never really seen that people have that absent in their life until I went to college, because it's just like, it was one of those things that was always in my life, so I never really noticed, I guess, how important it is or how much I benefited from it until I went to college. And I was like, wow, you guys have no idea what I'm talking about. And it was like one of those things too that was then, here, let me kind of show you like what it's supposed to be like. Let me like come hang out at our house, like come, we're gonna make dinner, come, we'll feed you, like, because that's always what my parents did. And so I kind of like, I know like I'm supposed to roast him and embarrass him, and
that's
I have
totally
funny
what
stories.
I was expecting too.
and I have funny stories, but it was great growing up having them. Obviously there was things that, you know, I would be like, man, my dad sucks, he's, you know, he took my TV away or something like that. Yeah. Like I always, you know, you have those when you're a kid, but I'm immensely grateful for the way that I grew up, especially now when I'm in my young adult phase where I'm still trying to figure things out and I'm still getting help from my parents, but also I'm just like, wow, they've really set me up for life, physically, emotionally, spiritually, in every aspect I could have thought of or even not even realize I needed.
That's great. So yeah, I guess maybe you did a okay job.
Maybe we should just stop the interview.
That's it. We're done. Yeah. No, so I think that's important, and I can see that with your mom and dad. I think they're amazing people, and one of the things I would say is that we talk about in the ministry all the time that you know, we're preparing for our area of operations. The idea is that or area of responsibility. Everybody's been given an area of responsibility. Everybody has one, and we talk about the three main places, and that being family and friends, and then your workplace, and then the community. And this just goes to show how important it is to be engaged in your kids' lives. And, you know, those tough times when you have to make tough decisions as a parent, you know, those are ways that we get involved that hopefully they'll understand when they get later on in life and they see, okay, now I understand why that was the thing that we did. And so I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and I'll jump in there. Obviously, we made a lot of mistakes growing up, but one thing our family always did was we continued to chase each other. And we taught our kids to do that for each other as well. So all 4 of my kids are very close because even though they fight like normal kids do, they still, they refuse to let that be the last word.
Yeah.
And so they just continuously chase each other. And I admire them for that.
It's awesome. Okay. So thank you for giving us a background about you. And now we're kind of getting the meat and potatoes of the conversation. So I've known your dad for quite a long time now, and we just had, we're on number 3 coming up in March for Junto Tribe Infill. And at the first Junto Tribe Infill, your dad shared a little of your story from his perspective of what happened with you specifically. And of course, as you just pointed out, mom and dad and family were there to do their part and do everything they can to help you with what you're going through. And I hear that you have an Alive-aversary. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, you are.
Which is coming up. And so if you don't mind, just give us an idea. So the idea is it's an anniversary of you being alive.
Yes.
So this kind of sounds like a serious topic. So we'll just turn it over to you and tell us what happened.
Yeah, so the Alive-aversary is December 25th. That was the day I was released from the hospital. So we just kind of think of that day as like that's when we celebrate, kind of just marking the end, I guess. Not that it was the end of hard times, we still had a long road after that, but kind of just the end of that full, really just hard time. But yeah, I mean, the beginning, I'm going to try to go chronologically. Sometimes my dad's going to help me a little bit with that because some of the pieces, the timeline of it, I get mixed up just because of the medication and surgeries. It kind of just gets foggy in terms of order. But so it kind of just starts, it was actually a Sunday night. We were just hanging out. My mom was like doing my nails at the kitchen table.
Yeah, and just for some perspective, it was December of 2015, so Libby would have been in
December
6th
6th.
grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was in
I was like
grade.
11 when this happened. So like my mom was doing my nails. It was 8 p.m. Like it wasn't like super late at night or anything like that. And I just kind of started to get this really sharp kind of stabbing pain, almost like a hitch when you're running. That's probably not the right word, but like a cramp when you're running on your side. That's what it felt like in my lower abdomen. And so my mom told me, she said, just go to bed, go to sleep it off. It'll probably just be gone in the morning. Because it was like a very small amount of pain at first. So it wasn't like time to raise the alarm, that type of thing.
We basically told her to walk it off.
Yeah. No.
We're like, hey,
they did.
try and go to the bathroom.
They were like, tough it out.
You got gas pains. I'm sure it's fine.
Yeah. And I honestly believed them too. Like I thought it was that because it wasn't anything crazy. And so me and my sister used to like battle to like sleep with each other at night because we didn't want to sleep by ourselves. So I was like, please let me sleep with Maddie, Mom. Like I'm in pain, please. And she was like, fine. So I was sleeping with Maddie and it just kept getting worse and get worse and worse and worse and worse. And so I got up to like try to go to the bathroom, and at this point the pain was so much I was like I couldn't breathe. Like I was holding my breath, trying not to move at all because I was in so much pain, and I'm like bracing down the walls to get to the bathroom, like shaking. And I come back and like I can't even get in the bed, like Maddie has to help me. And so she runs and gets my parents. This part is still a little foggy, but I believe, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, that's what happened. Maddie came in and was like, hey, guys, it's bad. And at that point, Sarah and I had laid down to go to sleep. So, like any good father, I get up upset. Like, I'm mad. She's just trying to get out of school. And I, stomp my way across the house, open the door to her bedroom, and I take one look at her, and I could tell it was different. And I looked at Sarah, and I said, I actually scooped her up in my arms, and I carried her to the car, and I buckled her in, and I said, drive as fast as you can to the hospital, and don't stop. If the police stop you, just keep going. And then I got the other kids settled, and about an hour later I joined Sarah and Libby at the hospital. So
Okay.
So get to the ER. I think if I remember correctly, she didn't even park. Like she pulled into I think it might have even been the ambulance bay. Like she pulled to the ambulance bay, she put the car in park, and she got out with me and went in there. Like she didn't even be like, go inside, I'll be there in a second. Like she put in the ambulance bay, parked it, left the doors open, grabbed me, went inside.
we were scared.
Yeah, so we go in, and they're doing like the paperwork and like what's wrong. My mom's like, look at her, what do you mean? Like, I'm at this point, I'm hysterically sobbing. Like, I don't remember if I was screaming. I might have been. I don't know. The ER is kind of all a blur. I think my brain kind of blacked it out a little bit, but I was in there, and I finally get a room. They're trying to figure out what's wrong. They were doing some tests, that type of thing. I think they did even like some blood work tests.
Oh, they did all kinds of tests.
Yeah, I don't really remember what exactly tests they did, but they did like a lot of things, and then they basically couldn't find anything wrong, and they were going to send me home. And my mom basically was like, well, you better figure out what it is because we're not leaving.
I love moms.
Sarah told him no,
Yeah.
so...
I was given strict instructions.
Yeah.
That you will hit this man if he tries to tell us that he's sending our little girl home. So I'm like, okay, I gotta murder a doctor.
Yeah.
Fine. Wife said do it, so I'll do it.
Wife said do it, so I'll do it. So yeah, so then this, I don't know if it was necessarily the surgeon. I don't know like who it was, but I think it was the surgeon, like the trauma surgeon or something.
Yep, he was coming in
okay.
to discharge you.
Yeah.
Yep.
And my mom was like, absolutely not. And so he was like, okay, let me do one more test. So I'm laying on the hospital bed, and he comes over to like the end where my feet are, and he taps me on like the bottom of my right foot, and I like fly off the bed screaming. And he was like, okay, we're gonna take her to surgery right now. And my mom is like confused because she was like, so you tapped her foot and now you're like, okay, we're going to the OR right now, like she has to go right now. Like what is happening?
Apparently 10 years of med school, they teach you the toe tap test for ruptured appendix.
Yeah.
It's very scientific, but that was the thing that changed all their minds. And they literally took her from us, threw paperwork at us, and she was in the operating room about 20 minutes later.
Yeah.
Man.
So they went in, they took my appendix out. I don't remember the exact amount of like fluid in my abdomen that they ended up taking out, but it was
1 liter.
Yeah, it was
a
1
full
liter
liter of fluid in that first surgery.
of like just toxic, all that kind of stuff. And then I was put in the ICU straight out of surgery.
Well, originally they told you, kiddo, that you were going to probably go home in a couple days.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And they were like, hey, got the appendix. It definitely ruptured. It was weird though. This is the first time they were like kind of stumped. Because they said usually a ruptured appendix is like black and really gnarly. Hers
like it
was,
looks like it should have ruptured.
Yep, but hers was perfectly pink. It was like beautifully colored, but it wasn't intact.
And the timeline of it just didn't make sense either.
Right. And then they also said usually the fluid is really gnarly too, because it's all this bacteria and bile and nasty stuff. And the fluid they pulled off her abdomen was crystal clear.
Yeah.
So they're like, we don't know what to make of that. We expect her to go home in a couple days.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like medically, it just wasn't like a normal case of appendicitis. So then I was in the ICU. Siblings didn't come visit me at first just because it was so quick and just kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But we were there in the ICU for 2 weeks. We did end up getting moved later on, but so we were in the ICU. When I finally did get, when my parents were finally like, okay, we're going to bring the siblings to come see her. I don't remember how long I was in there before they came, but they came to visit, and Lila and James were still too little. They didn't actually come into the room. I don't know the reasoning for that. I'm sure you do, obviously, but they just didn't understand. But Maddie is older than me, so she obviously kind of knew what was happening. And from what she's told me, she was like, yeah, I kind of got mom was like, I know it's going to be hard, like it's going to be scary, but you can't cry. Like, you can come out and cry, but she's trying to hold it together, so I need you to go in there and try and hold it together for her too. And the moment you come out, you can cry. That's okay. But we need to be strong for her, so I need you to try really hard not to cry. And I mean, Maddie's only 13. Like, like it's not like she's, a grown adult, is fully capable of okay, I gotta.
Yeah, at 13, her favorite hobby was crying.
So. Yeah. So,
no offense, Maddie.
No, it was. So, she comes in and right away I can already see, like, she's smiling at me, but I see that her eyes are starting to water. And so she sits on my right side, and she looks at me and, she's smiling, and I can just see, like, she's, like, trying not to sob. Like, tears are streaming down her face, but she's smiling at me. And she looks at me and she's like, well, Libby, can I hold your hand? Because mom was like, she's very sensitive, like, don't touch unless you ask, because she's in a lot of pain. Like, you don't want to hurt her. Just ask if you want, like, a hug or hold her hand or something. And so Maddie asked, she was like, can I hold your hand? And at this point, I was just so weak, and I just didn't have any energy at all. So I looked at her. I could barely even, like, turn my head to look at her, but I looked at her and I said, yes, but you're going to have to pick it up because I can't move it. Wow. And so she scooped up my hand, and I see at that moment she kind of let the tears all go. And so she's smiling at me, and there's just, like, tears, like, dripping down her face. And then for me, like, I passed out. So that, for me, that was kind of, for us, I think, like, the building blocks, foundations of our relationship, because we had never had to be there for each other like that, like in a genuine life or death situation. And it was one of those where I couldn't give 100%, so she was doing it for both of us. And so that was really, even as an 11-year-old, like, that meant a lot for me. And that was also a really hard moment for me too. I cried too, because I wanted to meet her halfway and I couldn't. And so she went the full way for me. And so that was really impactful for us.
Just to give you a little context too. So right after the surgery, she spiked a fever pretty quick. And they weren't expecting that. And so what we think is, like, the infection was starting to take hold. And so, of course, you spike a temperature. At this point, all she had was some surgical drains. Right? Yeah. And so that wasn't that dramatic. It was just used to drain excess fluid from the surgical site. And then, they just went into this, we called it medical whack-a-mole game, where they would treat something new and something else would pop up.
Yeah.
So do you remember this progression, or do you want me to explain it?
I prefer you to explain, and I'll interject, because I only remember a few things. I was in and out a lot.
All right. So the first thing that happened was her belly filled with fluid faster than the surgical drains could keep up. So that was the first problem that they had to solve, and it resulted in, like, all the fluid going from her extremities to her abdomen. So she started blowing out IVs like crazy. Like, they would put one in and it would last a few hours, and then it would completely blow out. They couldn't deliver any more fluid through it or medicine, and so they'd have to start a new one. And so that was the first big step, was they went and put a central line in, which means they find a really big vein in your chest to put a really massive IV. It's for a couple reasons. So they could streamline meds to you even quicker, but also so they can hydrate you.
Yeah.
Because when your cells start shedding fluid, that needs to be replenished, and that's what her body was doing, and they couldn't figure out why. So that was the first big thing. Then her body really started doing some screwy things. Her right side chest cavity started filling with fluid, and so they kind of explained it like, look, her belly can't hold anymore. It's got to go somewhere. So it went into her chest. Yeah. And so they took her back for a surgery, and they put a chest tube in, which if you've ever seen your kid with a chest tube, it's pretty scary.
Man.
And it's very uncomfortable. Like, it's very painful. If it moves even a little bit, it feels like someone's ripping your lung out. Like, it hurts. And
it was weird because, like, the chest tube would get clogged up, and they'd have to come in and strip the tube, which is pretty violent.
That was terrible.
It's traumatic in a lot of different ways. So not long after they did that, then her left side chest cavity filled up with fluid. So they took her again and put a second chest tube in. So now she's got what they call a PICC line, which is that central line, and 2 chest tubes plus the drains on her abdomen. And yeah, so every day they'd tell us they don't know why she's reacting the way that she is, and then every day they'd take her back for another really scary procedure. And this is a connective moment for you and I, Lib. I don't know if you remember this, but every day I'd look at you and I'd say, I know it hurts, but hang in there, because one of these days you and I are gonna dance our way out of this hospital. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
I just kept telling you that because she was a competitive dancer. And so we just we told each other that to remain optimistic. Yeah. Yeah, I just kept saying that to you. And then they started testing her for what made sense. All of it came back negative. Then they started testing her for the things that didn't make sense. All of that came back negative. And then the really scary moment came when her kidneys started to shut down.
Man. Never
a good sign. And so what they told us, and I'm going to let you take the story from here, because this is kind of one of the more impactful things, was we need to go in and all at one time, we need to remove all the fluid that's collecting inside of her body so that the drains and the chest tubes aren't working fast enough. So we want to take her back for a surgery, and we're going to take it all out at once. Mm-hmm. So we prepped you, we prayed over you, we held your hand, and we wheeled you back to surgery. And when I told the story at Infill, I talked about the red line on the floor that marks how far the parents can go, and how it was so surreal because you see it in the movies, but you don't ever encounter it yourself. And it's a real thing. It's like the restricted line that you can't go any further. And I had to walk my kid to that line. And that's where your part of the story comes in.
Yeah, if you don't mind. So super impactful as a dad. You're sitting there watching this, and you're trying to stay positive and encouraging and not show fear. I'm assuming, everything's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. But you don't know.
True.
Right. So how did you handle that sort of emotion going through you? What did you do in order to get through that?
Well, I mean, I'll start sharing how God showed up, but I did lean into scripture. A lot of people came to support us. I trusted, but honestly, guys, at one point I had conversations with God. I went through the full gambit of denial and bargaining, all the stages of grief. But it's not because like I feel like I handle trauma well, but I actually made deals with God, and I told him, I said, look, I know that you are here and that you are protecting us and that you are in this situation. And I just want you to know that if you take her, I'll still love you. Phew. And we had that conversation, my wife and I, many times during the course of that. Mm-hmm. I don't know how I conjured up the strength for that, because it's impossible when you're going through it. But at some point you do have to just have that conversation.
Man, it's powerful.
Yeah.
Whew. Okay. Libby, how you doing over there?
The waterworks have started.
Yeah, I understand. And I think there's probably people listening right now that are doing the same thing. So don't feel bad about that. And I kind of want to, we might touch on that a little bit more, Jim, here in a minute. But so I'll turn it back over to you. Mm-hmm. So what's the next thing you're thinking you want to share?
So kind of following what my dad was saying, so the red line of where you stop. So that last surgery I went into, my dad's walking with me. I'm getting wheeled back. They hadn't given me, I think they did give me some of the anesthesia, but it hadn't like fully kicked in yet. But I was starting that way. When I get into the OR, you're not like fully awake while you see all the equipment. As an 11-year-old, that's terrifying. So they had given me a little bit of it, and then I was gonna get the rest when I got there. But I'm being wheeled back to the surgery. My dad's holding my left hand, and I'm, again, not a lot of energy, so I'm kind of just laying there. I'm not really looking at my dad yet. I kind of got my eyes closed, like mentally preparing myself for just another surgery, just because this whole thing is exhausting. It's terrifying. I'm feeling very alone, and like I kind of have been abandoned in a sense, just because they don't know what's wrong. My parents can't really do anything. And everyone keeps telling me, I know it hurts, but it's okay. But you don't know. Mm-hmm. And I'm, as an 11-year-old, like, that's really hard to come with they're trying to the help, like, trying to see where they're coming from. And I was just kind of thinking, like, everyone needs to stop telling me that they know that it hurts, because they don't know. And it's, like, I'm really struggling right now.
You mind if I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this idea, I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, an 11-year-old feeling abandoned. Mm-hmm. And just feeling completely alone and left behind. How did you deal with that? So
I didn't sleep a lot, like, at all, this whole thing, unless it was, like, medically induced or coming out of a surgery. So, like, at night, I mean, like, if you think, I've got this giant PICC line, like, in my chest. I've got two giant chest tubes coming out of my side. I've got an NG tube going down my throat because I'm not allowed to eat anything. I have oxygen going in my nose. I also had an IV at one point, also in my hand. And I also, like, my back pain started in this hospital trip too, so, like, there's not really a way for me to get comfortable at night. And I can't really move myself either. Like, when I would slide down in the hospital bed, like, the nurses would have to help me move up. Like, I can't really move my body either. So I would just lay there uncomfortable. And, you know, they allowed my parents to sleep. One of them every night would sleep in the room with me, like, on a cot, which was actually against, like, hospital policy. But they brought a cot in for my parents so I wouldn't have to be by myself. And so, like, I technically wasn't by myself, but I'm laying there awake. My parents are asleep. And I just was, you know, I'd pray every night to God, and I felt like I had been abandoned because I wasn't getting better. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of just battling with the doubt in my mind of, God, I'm praying to you. God, I'm trying to be faithful. I'm trying to praise you even though I feel like I'm being ripped from the inside out. But where are you? Like, where are you? Because I'm in the valley and I'm waiting for you to show up, and I can't see you. And it's not because I'm not looking for you, because I'm looking for you. But it feels like you have left me here to die by myself. Mm-hmm. Because even though my parents are here, there's nothing they can do for me. And I'm in this by myself. Like, if I die, it's just me going. Mm-hmm. So I felt like I had been abandoned. Because, I mean, we prayed night and day. We worshiped night and day. Like, the Hillsong album, You Make Me Brave, had just come out. And so my dad would blast that on repeat. Oh, Bethel, thank you. Would blast that on repeat, especially the song You Make Me Brave, because that was kind of where the, like, you can do this came from, that the Lord makes us brave. Like, you can do this, that type of thing, when the pain was really bad.
And God bless the nursing staff. Because we literally played it on loop.
We played it. It didn't matter if it was 3 a.m. Like, we would blast it if I was having a hard time.
They didn't say a word. It was awesome.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you guys right now.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for everybody to hear what I just heard. Is that you just used the word worship.
Yes.
Okay. So, and then Dad, Jim, said here a second ago, he said, and we were playing this music, and you know, the nurses got part of it. And I think if I heard that right, you're saying that they were being ministered to as well.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
During that time frame. So what's amazing to me is this idea of worshiping through this terrible suffering, where you have no idea if you're going to be here tomorrow. Right.
Yeah.
And can you, hopefully this isn't unfair to you, but think about that. I mean, that's an amazing thing. And when you're able to get yourself to worship through something like that. Mm-hmm.
So
I didn't really give you a question. I'll just let you take off.
Okay. I think it kind of came from my dad, at least. Like, he really facilitated that in that room.
And Mom, too.
Yeah, Mom for sure. But, like, I have this distinct memory of, like, I would say I have a very high pain tolerance. Like, when the nurses would come in and ask me, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is it? Normally, even though it hurt, like, really badly, I would just say, yeah, it's like a 5 or a 6. But and one night, it was so bad, like, we didn't even have the lights on. I'm actually, like, screaming. It was, like, early hours of the morning, because I'm just in so much pain, and I just feel helpless, and I just didn't know what to do. You know, the nurses are trying to help me, and they had given me the max amount of morphine they could legally give me, and some, and I still was in so much pain, and they're like, I'm sorry, like, we just have to wait. Like, we have to wait.
Gosh.
And so I have this distinct memory of me not really thrashing as much as you can thrash when you don't have that much energy, but just, like, screaming and tears streaming down my face, and my dad is standing in the corner with his phone above his head playing You Make Me Brave. And I'm sitting there, and I'm trying to like listen to the song too, and with tears actually streaming down my face, I'm just not even really singing, because I couldn't really sing, but just kind of like saying over and over in my head, like, you make me brave, you make me brave. Just trying to pull myself through it. Well, really, he was pulling me through it, but that's kind of what I mean by worshiping, that, not that, okay, God, thank you that I'm not in pain, because I was in pain, but, okay, God, thank you that I know you're going to be there on the other side. I just have to make it. I just have to make it to where you're going to meet me.
So not only that, Lib, but tell everybody what happened at the red line? Because we talked earlier about feeling abandoned and feeling helpless. What happened at the red line when I let go of your hand?
Yeah, so kind of backtracking to being walked back. Again, I was really nervous. I was really scared, and kind of fading in and out. So that didn't really help that I was scared, because I was like, oh, I'm awake. Oh, I haven't gone to the surgery yet, And so being wheeled back, my dad's holding my left hand, and we kind of got to a point where I was like, okay, he's still there. Like, I don't have to let go yet. And so I like look over at my dad, and at this point, he had already hit the red line. Like, he had stopped walking with me, but I hadn't realized it yet. And so when I looked over, it was no longer my dad, but it was Jesus. And he's standing there walking with me, and I can feel the weight, the warmth, the physical form and shape of his hand in my hand, and I can see his full face. And he's just looking at me smiling. And it's really hard to describe, but it is this, just in this beautiful, like, glowing aura of light around him, of just, like, it was undeniably, unmistakably Jesus. And I finally found him in the valley. I finally saw him in the valley, because he was there the whole time. Like, and we can talk about just the little instances of when he was there and I just didn't see it. But I was the moment where I finally saw him, in my instance, physically saw him and felt him. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be okay. Like, I'm going to make it through this. Like, I can do this. And then I went black, and then I went out for surgery.
Okay. I got to jump in real quick. So I didn't want to interrupt, but I want to go back to something really quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in the ministry, we talk about 7 different archetypes that we feel are important for men, and also what we're doing with the marriage groups now. And one of those is a warrior. And the first thing that popped in my head when you said that Dad was standing over by the window or in the corner or whatever it was, and he had his, the music, and he was playing it, all I can see in my mind is him just, like, aggressively, not aggressively, but you know what I mean? Just in your mind, you're aggressively fighting. And the warrior mentality of do not take my kid, and then getting involved in that spiritual fight. That's the first thing that popped in my head. And then you want to say anything about that?
No, keep going.
Okay. And then the second piece that I really want to bring up is and I may make some people mad, and I'm sorry, but I also think that it's time for us to have conversations as Christians and be able to debate about different things. My thing is that Jesus, if we go into the Bible and we look at the Bible, not once did Jesus ever say, I'm going to give you cancer. I'm going to give you this. I'm going to give you that. What we see is Jesus constantly coming in the picture to get rid of that. He's healing people. He's never actually giving them anything. So I just want to, what I think is amazing is that you being sick, that's not God's plan for you, right? That's not, I'm going to give her this to prove a point or to bring him closer to whatever.
Or to punish her.
Or to punish her.
Punish
or
me.
or any of that. And we can, and I've got plenty of reasons why I believe that. But what I think is amazing is that this is the perfect example of, being 11 years old and seeing Jesus come through the door and be there for you. That just goes to show you how close our God actually is, and how interested in us that he actually is. And I think it's just a really important point to make.
Yeah. Agreed. I mean, and talking about the warrior spirit, what happened next, what my daughter did next is even more impressive. I mean, it's, if you thought it was cool that I dropped her hand and Jesus picked it up, and I would argue he was holding it the whole time, even while I was holding her hand. What happened next is just absolutely amazing.
Okay.
So, for starters, while she was holding our Savior's hand, her mom and I were collapsed on the floor in the waiting room, because it was so scary. So we're literally crying on the floor, and these 2 men walk in and they just wait patiently for us to finish. And they're like staring at us. And so we finally get it together long enough to stand up and make eye contact with these guys, and they step forward and they go, "Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Marion, your daughter Elizabeth, because the name on her chart is Elizabeth, is her name Libby?" And we go,
Wow.
"Yep." "Why?" And they go, "Well, we are friends with Libby's dance teacher."
That's crazy.
And Libby's dance teacher has been sharing her story all over Facebook. And we want you to know two things. One, that we're her OR nurses, the two of us. We have been praying for her for 3 weeks. We're both men of faith, and we just want you to know that we have that OR covered in prayer. And so at the perfect time, these two dudes showed up, like angels, and they took care of her parents while Jesus was taking care of her.
It's
pretty cool.
Okay, so I'm not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to cry.
Oh, I'm supposed to cry. But it gets even better than that.
I can't wait.
So Lib was unconscious for all this, so I'm going to just kind of take over these details. But they, of course, they intubated her for the surgery, and they came out after these nurses attended to her in the OR, and they say, "Mr. and Mrs. Marion, we had to intubate her for the surgery, and for the first time in several weeks, her lungs are resting. So we want to keep her on intubation." Now, normally when that happens, it's a bad sign. It's a really bad sign if they want to keep the patient on intubation. But they basically just said, "Look, her lungs are resting for the very first time. Let's ride this as long as we can. So we're going to keep her in a medically induced coma so that she can rest and her body can heal." They still really don't know what the heck's going on at this point. And so that was the decision. And Sarah and I had to come to grips with that really, really quick. Because we knew the next time we were going to see her, she was going to be on life support equipment, which is traumatic.
The ventilator, yeah.
So, I don't know, an hour later, Sarah's brother comes walking into the hospital like a white knight on a horse.
Yeah.
You know, because at this point, Sarah and I, we had no more strength left. And this guy shows up, and he scoops the two of us up in his arms. And he was just... man, just strength for the two of us to carry on. It was really, really cool. We didn't know he was coming.
Yeah, he surprised them.
He did. And so only one of us could sleep in the hospital room, and that night it was Sarah's turn, and of course I didn't want to go. But I had to. So I get in the car, I start driving home, and I get a call from Sarah, and she says, "Libby's awake. She's still on intubation, but she's awake." And normally when that happens, the patient tries to rip all the tubes out of their throat because it's extremely uncomfortable. But Libby wasn't. She was just calm. And so she grabs this whiteboard with a marker and starts writing notes. All right. And she said, "Tell Dad to go home and get some sleep because the other kids need him too." And so while she's in the fight of her life, she's thinking of her siblings and she's thinking of me. And she said a lot of other things, but, you know, of course, I'm like, I'm coming back immediately, you know, and Sarah's like, wait, she's writing something, like she could hear me. And she just simply said, "Tell Dad to go home."
That's crazy.
And so fast forward to the next day. Then she's been on intubation for 24 hours after we've communicated with this whiteboard thing. And she does wake up finally, and she does start struggling to get the tubes out of her mouth.
Yeah.
And Sarah and I are in the room with her uncle. When it happened, only 3 people were allowed in the room at a time during the day, and she starts struggling. They immediately kick us out because parents can't be in there for that. So they escorted us out of the room. I look back, and they're arguing with Sarah's brother, Justin. And he is standing at the foot of Libby's bed with his arms crossed, and he goes, "You can kick them out, but I'm not going anywhere."
Wow.
And they go, "No, you don't understand, sir. Everybody has to go." And they're like, "You're about to do something really, really hard, and she needs to see a familiar face when she wakes up." And so legally we weren't allowed to be in there, but her uncle stayed.
That's amazing.
Well, and the nurse was like this little petite, like maybe 5-foot lady, and he's like 6'3", 200 pounds. So he essentially was like, "If you want me to leave, make me. Like, I'm not going."
He totally was like,
Yeah.
"Move me if you want."
Yeah. She was like, "Okay, I won't. You can stay. Just stay out of our way."
It's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was that like, Lib? Do you remember that moment?
Oh, unfortunately, yes. So from my perspective, it was very different. So I do remember the waking up and the panic. Like, it's really hard to describe it to you if you've never experienced it, obviously. But for me, like, I started having a full-blown panic attack. Like, I'm like scratching at my chest, my neck, my face, just trying to get it off, like trying to get it out. And, the nurses are like, no, you can't do that. So they're, not that they're pinning me down, but they're trying to keep my hands from ripping it out. Mm-hmm. And then this nurse comes and sits down next to me, and she has the actual bag. And so they unscrewed the physical tube that was connected to the machine and hooked up the manual bag to my actual tube. I think the intent of that was to get me to calm down so I could see that I was getting air, that the bag was inflating and deflating. But that honestly just made it so much worse. Like, it made it because I'm watching her inflate and I feel and I'm not breathing. Like, mentally I was like, no, I'm not. And so she looks at me and she's trying to reassure me, she's pumping the bag, and she's like, it's like she looks at me and she says, you're getting enough air. And I death gripped her forearm, and I obviously can't talk because I had this, but like in my brain I was trying to say, like, I'm not breathing. Like, I'm not getting any air. You need to bump the bag faster because I'm going to die. Like, I can't breathe. And you're sitting there, actually sitting on your butt, not helping me. I'm about to die. You have to, like, I can't breathe. And so that was the full moment of, this is it. Like, this is where I die. Like, genuinely. That was the lowest low for me, because my Uncle Justin is standing in the corner of the room.
Like the Praetorian Guard.
Yeah. Like,
his arms crossed.
Like, just watching this whole thing happen. And here I am, this tiny little, I can't help myself. No one else will help me. I'm begging the nurse next to me to help me because I cannot breathe, and nothing's happening. And I had a split-second moment before they put me back under of, they're all going to just sit there and watch me die, and Jesus has left me here. He's left me. And my parents are gone. They've left me. And then it all just goes black, because then when they actually did try to start pulling it out, it got stuck and they couldn't get it out. So they had to put me back under anesthesia to actually get me off the ventilator and pull the tube out. So that's why I went under. And really, most of that was just the adrenaline and the panic talking of just my body thinking I'm not breathing. Because I think, too, the first time I woke up, I was still a little groggy with the anesthesia. But the second time was fully off the anesthesia, fully aware that I wasn't breathing for myself. And then the panic set in and you couldn't tell me anything. Like, that kind of did it. And so then once they put me under, they were able to take it out, actually.
It's just an incredible amount of struggle and suffering that you went through.
Yes.
Okay. So what's next? What happened next?
Well, I mean, at this point, she started to, like, turn it around. And we talk about work ethic in young people.
Yeah.
This kid was told, like, at some point you have to get up and move. Your back hurts because you're laying in this position. It's weird. All the surgeries, all the incisions and the cuts and the tubes, the thing that hurt her the most was her lower back.
Yeah. From
sitting in the bed.
Yeah, it was
position.
was really bad.
And so somebody said, hey, you just every now and then do a walk around the nurses' station. So they'd literally get all their machines up, hook them up to a walker with all these tubes, and she would, with the walker, take 10 steps and then sit down. And then 10 more and sit down. But this kid turned it into this training regiment. She's like, I got to get out of here. I'm going to do this. And so she was just walking around this hospital 10 steps at a time like a maniac. It was awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And eventually she did. She started to get better. And I don't know, kid, tell Mike about, like, what the dance team was doing and what your dance coach was doing. Like, the level of support and prayer that was poured into that room was, I think, what motivated you to push, right?
Yeah. So I was on, like, the competition team at my dance studio. My dance studio was, like, a Christian dance studio. So, like, them praying for me and that type of thing wasn't really anything crazy necessarily, because, like, that was normal. Like, if you were told me they were praying for me, like, that would make sense. I went to a Christian dance studio. But, like, they would go to competitions, and obviously I wasn't competing. I was in the hospital. And my favorite color was teal. So they made these little teal ribbons and they would pin them to their little jackets that we would wear. Like every single competition they went to while I was in the hospital. And my dance teacher, like, it was Christmas time, you know, and I'm in the hospital and it's, you know, instead of getting to celebrate, you know, the holidays and the birth of Jesus, I'm fighting for my life, literally.
Yeah.
So she made this Christmas tree and she had all of the girls that were in my, like, competitive team, which were, like, my age and that type of thing, bring in ornaments, like dance-themed ornaments. And she made this Christmas tree for me with all these ornaments and they all wrote notes and tied them in ribbon and put them on the tree. And then she brought the tree to me so I could just kind of see, like, the support that I had. And I got to, you know, read all those notes and that was really encouraging. And she would come and visit me once I got out of the ICU because I didn't have any non-family member visitors in the ICU. I don't know if that was allowed or if that just was...
We declared her part of the
Yeah.
family so she could come in.
Yeah, so she came
Yeah.
and visited. She came and visited me and prayed for me a lot. But every competition, you know, they would she would post on Facebook, you know, something about, you know, we're rooting for you, we're praying for you, we're, you know, standing with you as much as we can. You know, she's not going to bring an entire dance team into the ICU to visit me, but it meant a lot.
Yeah, it was crazy too because this woman shared our story. At one point, she asked Sarah. This is really early too. She said, "You need to take a picture of Libby," and Sarah's like, "No, I can't. I don't want to remember this someday, and I'm just not interested in documenting this." And she said, "You don't understand. Someday this is going to be a part of Libby's testimony."
That's it.
And she needs to remember.
I love that.
Yeah.
And she needs proof that this happened. It was a really cool moment. So we do have like 5 pictures total. We didn't go crazy.
Yeah. Well, it was
that's
the
the faith
night
this woman had.
I came out on the ventilator too.
Yep.
So Mom was the one who stayed with me, and it was one of those where my mom was like, I don't want to remember her like this, because at this point we still weren't really sure if I was gonna pull through. And so she was like, I don't want my last picture of Libby to be this. I don't want to remember her like this.
And Mary Beth Campbell goes, this is going to be the start of her story, not the end. And she was right.
Yeah, that's awesome.
She was.
Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Okay, so, and I hope I'm not getting ahead of you guys. So
Go ahead.
tell me about, is there anything else that happened in the hospital, or is it time to go home, and what was that like?
I mean, there were a few funny moments.
Yeah, there were a few.
Yeah.
On the way out?
Yeah, so we ended up leaving ICU a couple days before Christmas. And on Christmas Eve in this hospital, a lot of people come in to give presents to the kids that are in the hospital.
Yeah.
So one of the groups that came in
Yeah.
were, it's Tampa Bay, so they're the Singing Pirates. Literally, there was a pirate Santa Claus that came in.
They came and visited me.
And I love these people. Their hearts are in the right place, but they sounded like...
Oh, it was terrible.
They sounded like somebody was strangling cats.
So awful.
Okay? Huge hearts, though.
Yeah.
Right? And so this crazy pirate Santa approaches me, and same story as the nurses. I've been friends with Mary Beth since high school. I've been following Libby's story. We were so hopeful we were going to get to meet her. And he goes... if she dances in this year's recital, I'm going to come watch her.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, buddy.
Yeah. Make
Sounds
sure you
good.
are.
And so, 6 months go by, and Libby had to work very hard to get her body
Very,
back
very
into shape
hard.
to
Yeah,
dance in
for
the
sure.
recital, but she did it.
Difficult.
She made it. And this dude approaches me in a suit, and he's like, hi. I'm like, hey, fella. And I looked at him funny, and I'm like, what's up? And he goes, oh, you don't recognize me, do you? And I go, nope, not even a little. And he goes, well, when we met, I was a pirate Santa. So I can understand why you don't recognize me.
Wow.
And he said, I was so touched by your daughter's story, I told you I'd come watch her dance, and I'm here.
For the
Man.
recital, so he came.
Yep. And he brought her a big bouquet of flowers.
He
and we found out later that guy was in the middle of a cancer struggle.
Wow.
And Libby's story inspired him.
Gosh.
And so he wanted to be there for her happy ending.
And there you
It's
go.
really cool.
If I can just say, that is already, your story inspired somebody else, and it continues to inspire people. And so you guys were inspiring people in the hospital. You were inspiring people that, you know, you talked about the 2 nurses that came in and you inspired them. And you talked about the dance team and everybody covering the story on Facebook, and how many people that went out to. And so it's amazing what faith does, and how it just, in our weakest moments, man, it can make us, it can help other people with exactly what they need at that point. And it's just so powerful.
Yeah.
And I think that's how Jesus works. So, got anything? You want to say anything? Okay. So let me ask you this then. James 1:2-3 says this. It says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know the testing of your faith produces perseverance." So I'm going to ask you some questions here. One of them is, we'll start with this first one, and then we'll see if I ask you the next one, because I want to be fair to you.
Okay.
And if you can't answer it, because then we'll turn it over to this guy over here, because I'm pretty sure he'll do fine with it. But
I got you.
what is the one piece of advice that you would give someone experiencing a hardship?
Piece of advice? I think it would probably be to find the people, whether that's your family or your friends or people that you go to, you know, a small group with, who are going to be your armor bearers for you. Because for me, that was my dad and my mom. I don't think I would have made it through that without my dad, especially, because you described it perfectly. Like, you let go of my hand and Jesus picked it up. When I needed that, you were there. When I needed strength, you were there. When I needed love, you were there. When I needed someone to just listen to me scream and cry, you were there. When I needed somebody to braid my hair, you couldn't do it, but you tried. Like you.
Thank God Mom was there for that.
Thank God. But you genuinely were my armor bearer. Go forth, I'm with you, heart and soul. Even though you were tired, even though you had 3 other kids at home who didn't understand, and even though you had to watch Maddie come in, trying not to cry, pick up my hand, like, you were there, and you emotionally, physically, and spiritually showed up. Spiritually is the main thing that I'm talking about. Like, I would have spiritually, mentally given up if you hadn't been there, because, like, yes, Jesus got me through that, but you did too. Like, Jesus saved me, but I am able to see where Jesus stepped in because I have you. And I'm able to recognize that was the Lord working, because I had you being like, I know it's hard, but you can do this. Like, you got it. Like, I know it's hard, but I need you to keep praying. I know it's hard, but I need you to keep worshiping. Like, I know it's hard. Like, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have been able to carry it by myself. But I had him and my mom to be my armor bearers for me. And now in life, like, that's my sister. So I think that her coming in and holding my hand, that was, when I say, like, the foundation, I think that was kind of, like, we're very close. Like, she's my armor bearer. But, like, my parents stepped in and were that for me. And were genuinely Jesus in the flesh on earth before Jesus came and, like, spiritually appeared to me. Like, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So my advice would be to find those people or that person who's going to be that for you no matter what, and is going to continuously point you to the Lord, even though sometimes it's going to suck and it's going to be hard and it's going to be painful and you're going to have doubts and you're going to have questions. Because I verbalized my doubts and my questions, and I was like, I don't understand why this is happening. And I even said, like, I feel like he's left me here to die, and I don't understand why. And I don't know why. Why I feel like no matter how much I pray, no matter how much I've been, you know, singing these songs, I still don't understand. And my parents were just always like, okay, well, let's just pray about it. Okay, well, let's turn the lights off. Let's just sit in some quiet for a little bit. Like, that was my parents in that moment in my life. So earlier when I talked about, like, my parents showing me, like, what Christ-like love is, and I know not everybody experiences that, like, I thought that Jesus walking with me was my dad because that's the way that my dad loves me.
Oh, wow.
And so that, when I felt his hand in mine, I genuinely thought it was my dad because my dad was there holding my hand. It didn't matter what time it was, always. He was always there. And he was supporting me physically, but he was supporting me spiritually, and that is what got me through it, for sure.
Okay, so I do want to say this really quickly, is I would agree with you 100% that this man sitting right across the way from me here is definitely a man that will bear the armor, right? And so that's one of your gifts, man. And same thing with your wife. So I think it's amazing that not only have I seen you do that, well, we're hearing the story right now, but you also do that with people. And it's just awesome. So thank you for being that person. Okay, I got one more question here. This one may be tough, so if you don't want to take it,
I got it.
I'm going to hand it over to this guy over here.
She's tough, man.
I know she is.
I have no doubt she'll be able to field this one.
Yeah, so it might be that we have people that are listening to this podcast right now, and there might be some people that don't believe, they don't have faith in Jesus, or they may have lost someone that's been through an ordeal like this, that didn't come out on the other side, that didn't survive, that wasn't able to pull through. My question for you guys is, what do you have to say to an individual that's listening to this going, oh yeah, well, same thing happened to me, and two things.
It didn't work out.
Yeah, it didn't work out. Two things. One of them, I prayed, I did everything else felt I could do. It didn't work out. Or I don't believe in what you have to say and it didn't work out. What's your thoughts on that? What would you tell somebody that has that thought right now?
Well, I think that's, if you're just thinking logically, that's something that logically anyone would be like, okay, yeah, but that same thing happened to me and this didn't work. And I obviously don't have all the answers. I don't understand everything, but like, the Lord is good and he's just and he's sovereign, and there is not a single thing that happens that the Lord did not know was going to happen, but then there's also not a single thing that the Lord isn't able to redeem and to use despite the pain and the hardship and the sadness that it caused. And you also have to think about too, I mean, if they're a believer, like, they got the best fate ever. They're dancing in heaven right now.
That's right.
We're here trying our best to bring heaven to earth as much as we can, but they're literally in heaven. Like, they're literally walking with Jesus, praising. Like, imagine how great that is. Like, it's hard for the people that may be left behind, and I'm sure, too, as an unbeliever, like, that's something that's hard to understand, and I totally get that, because heaven is also a confusing and hard thing for believers, too. Like, that's not just a unbeliever thing, but there's not a thing that hasn't been, that the Lord's hands haven't been in.
That's right.
You just probably haven't opened your eyes or ears to see it.
That's it.
And that's a hard pill to swallow, but that's the truth.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, there's not a moment when the Lord wasn't there, because even when I was in that deep valley and I was feeling like I was abandoned, I didn't know that every nurse in my OR room was praying for me and had been praying and fasting for the last 3 weeks. I didn't know that. I found that out after. And I didn't know that my parents were bargaining with God, giving him ultimatums, being like, you can't take her away, or if you take her away, I'll still love you. Like, I didn't know that. And then the Lord came through and fulfilled that. But also, like, the Lord, when we pray for things, he doesn't always give us what he wants, what we want. He gives us what we need and what he knows is best for us. And sometimes that is what we want. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't. And I mean, too, like, I know, like, he talked about it at Infill, but when he lost his dad, like, that, obviously he's praying for his dad to pull through. That's not something that he was wanting to happen.
That's right.
But he needed to go through that so that then when he came to this point in his life and he's now having to walk me through it, he had the strength and the faith to do that. And if he hadn't gone through that, I don't think you would have been able to walk me through it.
Nope.
Yeah, that's thank you for that. And the thing that I would just say is that whether we think we know everything about life and how it works, and we just don't, right? And there's so many questions. I mean, we know so many things, and yet we don't know. So there's a lot of things out there. And what I would just say for those people as well is that this is not the end. Mm-hmm. And no matter how we look at it, it's not the end. And so we love people. We want them to be with us forever if we can. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to see them or be with them again someday. And I think that's the key, is just to make sure that we always remember that. And I think it's pretty easy to forget it sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Of course. I think it's worth mentioning too. It is really hard to tell somebody going through a hardship how they should feel about it.
Yeah, for sure.
And when it doesn't work out, anything that you're going to tell them isn't going to make it better. Mm-hmm. In that moment. When I lost my father, I realized that God didn't give him cancer. God wasn't the reason that he died, but God was with me through it.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And he held me through it, literally. Mm-hmm. I did have a moment where that was very clear, kind of like Libby's moment where she held Jesus' hand. I had one similar with when my father passed away. And the reality is, God doesn't want us to go through that trial, but he is willing to walk with us through it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not saying that because I feel like you just need to face every trial like a champion, and you don't have to be vulnerable or feel despair. But that is still the truth.
That's it.
So, yeah. And I also would never tell you how to feel about it. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Because your emotions are real.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Man, this has been an amazing conversation. I want to thank you both for being vulnerable, and I want to thank you for not making me cry. But
it was hot in here. Your eyes were sweating.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute.
My eyes were sweating because it's too intense in here. But anyway, I really do, and I love you guys. I love your family, and I do appreciate you guys being vulnerable. Vulnerable. Is that the word?
Yeah,
I think that's the one.
Vulnerable.
And being open and talking to us. And my prayer is that through this story, more people will hear it and find healing that they need as well. So thank you so much.
Amen.
Awesome.
Love you, buddy. Love you guys
too.
out there.
Yep. Love you guys. And that's it for this installment of the podcast and Tribe Talk. And we will see you guys next time.
Peace.
Peace.